For those that don't know you and are trapped in an elevator with you, how would you describe yourself in like 2 minutes?
Uh, Mostly through the lens of what they need, because I think that that's the easiest, right? So my responsibility in the world is to make sales easier so businesses grow faster. And the tool I use to do that is strategic storytelling. So if I've only got two sentences to say, those are the two sentences that I would choose.
Those are very good sentences.
They
You
took a
know, it's
long time to get right.
as someone that fancies themselves a professional marketer, one of the things we talk about all the time with our clients is simplicity,
Yeah,
right?
it's
That it's,
key.
oh my God, we worked with a client for 3 months to come up with chef quality food in 5 minutes or less. Like
Yeah.
that's harder than it would seem.
You would think it would be easy, and the noodling on the perfect word set. It's funny. The tagline that we use for the company is "No story, no glory." That's it. 4 words, and it took forever to get that right. We must have gone through, months of, well, how about we approach it this way? And does this say what we really want it to say? And can we get it this way? And I don't think people realize the length of time it takes to make something taste good. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
I mean, in terms of like restaurant, like you will hover over a dish or a recipe and be like, nah, do this a little longer, do a little less of this, or whatever. And it's the exact same thing with any art craft, right? Cabinet making, tagline generation, making ratatouille. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's you wring your hands over getting it just right. And then the magic happens.
5 years in the fine dining restaurant to come up with Southern classics reimagined. 5 years, right? Because it was fusion, and then it was New Orleans, and because the thing is, and the reason that we're starting here is because I think that words matter. I would say that that's kind of the thesis of this whole thing, and so it's not just that you're properly explaining it; it's also that it's evocative.
Yeah. And how
And
you explain it matters a lot. And I think people just don't realize that, which is why everybody knows Apple and Nike and Dollar Shave Club and Disney, and they don't know the 8 billion competitors that are out there that are saying, once upon a time there was a 3-speed blender with an easy release lid for, quick cleaning. And it's like, wait, what?
well, I also think, and you said it at the top of the show, that it's not about why it matters. It's about why it matters to you. There's a fast casual, like quick service juice multi-unit that I work with. And when we started together, like on the outside of the windows, it said fresh, organic, cold pressed, which are great, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what they do, but that's not what they sell. I mean, what they sell is wellness and immunity and energy, and that's
Yeah.
about the customer. And that's what you said at the top of the conversation. You said, like, this is why it matters to you.
Yeah, I refer to that as definition marketing. That's a term that we sort of use because it's what everybody knows to do, right? I make shoes and they have great laces. Like that's all they know to say, and they don't think about what you've just done, right? That natural jump that you just made to, it's not about fresh squoze, right? Like it's about energy. It's about why you feel good or why you don't, or what this is going to do for you. That's where the storytelling is. It's not in the description of what you are.
And not that Simon Sinek was wrong. He's done just fine for himself.
He has done
But,
well.
he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. But I would also argue that they buy what it's going to do for them.
I think
And
that's the only thing that they do. I think Simon Sinek's book, and I made a video about this. It is the first book that I recommend with a caveat. And the caveat is this is fantastic if what you want to do is rally your people together. Then
Mhm.
you got to go and do it again to rally the audience together. So he's not wrong. It's just incomplete. He's given you part of the code, but he hasn't given you the whole code.
You own an agency. And so there are so many parallels in my mind between like the agency industry and the restaurant industry. Two very, very commoditized industries. Agencies are a dime a dozen. Restaurants are a dime a dozen. And it's nearly impossible to differentiate because what you do, they all do. You might do it differently, but it's no different than restaurants. All restaurants serve food, all restaurants serve beverage. And so, what is your approach to differentiation?
In my mind, it all comes down to the way that you promise it. So everybody is looking for something, but they're looking for it a little differently. So the real question is, how do you position yourself against the portion of need? And I use this as an example because it's easy for people to follow. Cars, and I'm a huge car guy, so I hate the first half of this argument because it's true. But all cars do the same thing. Okay, none of them bend the space-time continuum. None of them have handled world peace or desalinating salt water. Like you put yourself and your stuff in them and you go from here to there and then back again. That's it. But now I want you to imagine a dinner party where you have a Porsche owner and a Prius owner arguing about who gets it. Right? The distinction between those two is radical. And those two people who have a device, a product that actually delivers the exact same thing, will sit and argue all night long about how the other person doesn't understand. And I think that's really where the magic of this is. Too many people try to be a buffet, right? But if you want a great steak, you're not going to go to a buffet. You're going to go to a steakhouse. And so the whole point is figuring out, what do you love to do that's within this world that you want to be in? And how can you then tell an interesting story about why the way that you do steak is better? So the worst possible place you can be in is being the buffet. We do a little thing for everybody. That's like the worst. You want to fail your business. You want to become part of the statistic of, businesses that close in the first 5 years. Stay there. Stay in the middle of the road. Instead, go find a thing that you get really hopped up on. I like drawing pictures of purple cows. Fantastic. You can get $1 billion business on that. I forget what the guy's name is that does the big ass calendar. Have you seen this?
Yeah, Jesse Itzler.
Yeah, Jesse. Thank you. So he sells the big ass calendar. Now you can get a calendar anywhere, right? But he sends you a big ass calendar. Yeah. And that big ass calendar comes in a big ass roll and it has big ass laminate, and he sends them with a couple of big ass markers, and you sit down and you plan your entire year out on this thing. Brilliant, like chia pet, fake rock.
For sure.
Talking about like brilliant idea. So yeah, I think you're right on target. I think the point is, how can you find a way to express what you love about it in a way that aligns with what they love about it too? And when you can bring those two things together, you've got magic.
Let's look at the other side of that, though, because I think that's the fear for most of the people in the restaurant industry. Like when you look at what we do at its highest level, when it's done to perfection, we're professional servants. Mm-hmm. So we're not trying to piss anybody off.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you're going to niche down deep enough to create a category of one and not piss off a ton of people. I mean, I saw it in my own restaurant. Yeah. That people would walk in and they would say, can't you just make a bowl of gumbo? Like, can't you just do what everybody else is doing? That's all that I want. And like, it's hard to turn to someone and say, look, there's a place 2 miles down the road that does that. That's where you should spend your money.
But the more you say that, the more you become known for not being that. And the more you become known for not being that, the more people love you for it, who love you for what you do. So
isn't that the thing? It's about getting closer to the people that will love you for who you are as a brand.
That's the only thing that matters. See, the thing is, there is no solution for everybody, right? If that was the case, there would only be one marketing book at Barnes & Noble, because people would say, oh, well, it's been done. Like, there's the book. But there's 10,000 plus books on marketing that exist at Barnes & Noble or Amazon or wherever you happen to shop. And the reason why is because people buy what they like, not necessarily what is the best thing. So you might like Josh's point of view or tone of voice better than you like Bill's point of view or tone of voice. And if you do, you'll say, I'm not really a Bill guy. I'm more like a Josh guy. And that's cool. And that's all that any of us can hope for. So the real question is, how can you be visible to the people who will really appreciate what you've chosen to specialize in. And if you start looking at it that way, it makes it much easier to palate the person that you have to turn away to say, I'm really sorry, we don't do curly cheese fries here. We just don't. We're an upscale restaurant. We don't do that. And I know a really great place. And this is the thing that you can learn from the old Miracle on 34th Street, because this is the answer. The answer is you do the Gimbel's Macy thing. You go, you know what? We don't do that, but I appreciate it just as much as you do. And you know what? I found a really good place. Go to this little hole in the wall place that I found the other day. This guy, his name is John. He does the best curly fries that you ever had in your life. Like, I couldn't even begin to do them as well as he does. Now, all of a sudden, what you've done is you haven't pissed him off. Now, what you've done is you've turned this into an opportunity to say, I'm a foodie just like you are. And I recognize the value of that. Doesn't happen to be my thing. But listen, if you're really into that, boy, have I got a place to you. Oh. And don't forget, try the other guy, Juan, across town. Juan does it even better. Like, I forgot about him. And then what you've become is a resource. And guess where they're going to go the next time they want to eat your kind of food at your kind of level? They're going to go, oh, wow, that guy had an opportunity to be a jackass. But you know what he did instead? He let me into his world a little bit. How cool was that? You got to meet this guy. Well, who knows what he'll tell us next? And there you go. Now you've got a brand.
I have clients that have multiple brands. And so they'll start with me on one brand and then we'll go to the next and then we'll go to the next. And I'm like a mercenary. I'm, like I take a hatchet to brands. I take a hatchet to marketing, to menus, to all of this. I think that the expectation in working with someone like you or someone like me is that you would be bolting on, right? I'm going to add to your marketing strategy. I'm going to add to your brand. When I would argue that so much of what we do is we try and cut down to like the one thing. Like, what is the one thing that you can hang your hat on? And I would ask you, what's your process? Because I would argue that most clients come to you with that one thing hidden, right? Like a diamond.
Every one of them.
How do you uncover their one thing when they don't even know what their one thing is?
Well, they give it away and they don't mean to. It's what they care about, right? And then when you find out what they care about, you're like, oh, you really love this thing. And this thing is very rarely, we have to be careful because I don't want to go too wide, but nobody cares about the hammer and nail. What they care about is hanging the picture on the wall, right? So you have to understand that every brand only exists as a bridge from where I am now to the place I'm trying to go. And then they become irrelevant again. And you have to be okay with that, totally okay with that. So if you accept that premise that I only exist in this moment, in this light to serve this purpose, then it starts becoming easier to say, then I only do this thing. And this is what I really love to do. And you know what? My customers also happen to really love that I do it. So I'm really going to lean into that. And then you take a step back and say, if we don't choose to describe that, how could we build a story around why is that important to them? And that's when why does this matter to anybody becomes the game. So it's like, okay, well, we do I don't know, Southwest Airlines. Okay. Why? Why Southwest Airlines? Okay. Well, Herb saw that travel in 1970s only existed really for business travel and for the affluent. And he was like, well, that sucks. That means that for vacation, I can only go as far as my car will go or the train or bus that I can go will go. So instead, I want to try to democratize the sky. So if I build it this way, if I only fly one type of jet, if I only fly to secondary regional hubs, if I don't serve food, if I, then I can create this thing that would be really cool. And then the answer is, wouldn't it be nice if you could travel more than once a year by plane? And that wound up being the question that he asked. So tying it all back together, it's like, what is it that you're passionate about and they're passionate about, and why do they care? And then you start building your story there. Like, if you can discipline yourself to do that, your ability to tell an amazing story becomes really, really good.
I look at my career, I look at where I am today, and I would argue that if I knew everything I knew today 5 years ago, I would have gotten here in half the time with half the expense. And here you are with Brand Boss HQ, which is not your first agency.
Fifth.
And is relatively recent in the big scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
What was your approach? Because sometimes I think it's valuable to see how we take our own medicine. In deciding to launch a new agency, what did you decide your one thing was, and how did you decide to reveal that to the world?
Yeah. Well, first off, Brand Boss came about as a surprise. Somebody told me that I should go on TikTok. We were a regular agency, like a regular old schmo agency, chasing after big, you know, top 5,000, 10,000 businesses and just banging around like everybody else did. And I'd made a whole career out of that. So this was a real dose of medicine because after the pandemic, the ability to justify paying those kinds of costs started to decline. It wasn't that they didn't need it. It was that either, it was the first time ever that I heard businesses say, we can't afford to grow. And the reason that they couldn't is because they didn't have the people to manage it. They couldn't get their things from offshore. Gas prices were all over the place. And so all of a sudden they were like, don't grow us. Well, as a marketer, I'd never heard that before. I was like, what in the world? Well, the offshoot of all of that was gig economy and other things that people did. And someone came to me one day and said, you should go on TikTok. And I think you would do really well there. And I basically went on to prove him that he was wrong. And when I got on, there was this wave of people that were like, I have a small business. I have a small business. Can you help me? Can you help me? Like, we're not big enough to work with a person like you, but can you recommend something? And I sat down with my wife and business partner and I was like, maybe we've finally come to the point where we have to reimagine where our value is. Like, I don't think we're valuable the way we used to be anymore. And that means that we have to burn the whole thing to the ground and reconsider, like, trust nothing about our perception. Where are we valuable today? And what we found was that businesses, when they launch, are really good at getting early adopters. And then there's this plateau that happens. And that plateau happens somewhere around 1 million or 2 in the beginning, and then again around 10, and then again around somewhere between 35 and 50, where what brought them here won't get them there, and they have to change the way that they market. And so these companies kept coming to me, and it was so obvious that they were like, I knew how to get the first $1 million. Now what? Like, the early adopter curve is off. I can't buy my audience in performance marketing anymore. How do I change it? What do I do? And we were like, there are 33.6 million small, medium-sized businesses in the United States. Enterprise businesses don't even equal 1% of the number of businesses in the US. We're going after the totally wrong group. So the only thing that mattered to these people was, how do we change the way we tell our story to appeal to mass? Because what got us here was only appealing to the early adopter, and we need to change it so that they know that we're for them as well. And once we figured that piece out, then the rest of it became very easy. We need to develop our menu this way. We need to develop our, relationships this way. We need to develop our pricing structure this way. And so it really became a very obvious thing. Like, this is where the need was headed. And we just chose to join the stream and get ahead of it. So that it was a difficult transition because it wasn't what we had ever believed in, but it was amazing what happened once we embraced it.
I get the vibe that you're an extrovert. Is that accurate, would you say?
All day long, every day.
For sure. Same. But at the same time, I never wanted to evangelize my brands. Like, that was never the goal. I mean, no different than you. Like, the goal wasn't to be like this floating head on TikTok talking about how good my stuff is and how smart we are and how hard we work all day. But it was a paradigm shift in your business. And I would also argue that for your client, especially the early stage, evangelism is so core to that early stage growth. And yet most founders are reluctant to do it. So when somebody starts working with you, how do you push them into the forefront so that they evangelize their own brands?
Well, the first thing is that I tell them never to evangelize their own brand. What I do instead is, if you really take a look at what it is that makes people uncomfortable, it's that when they get on a social media platform, they see it as public speaking. Okay, so let's deal with problem number 1 first, because this is a multifaceted one. Problem number 1 is, am I comfortable standing in front of anybody and talking? Well, the reason most people are uncomfortable talking in front of people is because in some part, not in whole, that they feel like they're going to be judged or they're going to be evaluated. Well, you can take a lot of that sting out of the conversation by saying, don't talk about yourself. You are a specialist in something. Give away a lesson, one Scooby snack each time you're on social media. Just get on and be like, you know what, today I'm thinking about how to do this one thing. And I've noticed that I've run into a bunch of people that don't know how to do it well. Like I find myself teaching this same lesson over and over and over again. So let me tell you what it is that I experienced today and how I helped some people through it in the hopes that it might help you. Now, this has taken all the sting out of I have to somehow say that I'm great without sounding like a jerk and whatever. Like it's not about that now. Now what I'm saying is look, I see a problem. I happen to know how to fix that problem, or at least I have an approach that could fix the problem. Let me share with you what it is that I know, and then you can benefit from it. Now, the weird part is that now we have a secondary fear that comes up, which is, oh my gosh, if I tell people what I know, then they won't use me. Nothing could be further from the truth. What instead happens is trust is formed because they go, oh my gosh, Josh is willing to tell me something that he knows that I don't know. Thanks, Josh. And that gets one little check box in the trust zone. And when you've done that enough times, what happens is people call you and they say, hey, I'm a little nervous about this, but I saw that you helped some other people on this thing. Could you help me too? And you say, yeah. And then like the stress comes out of them and then they pour forth on this thing that they're trying to achieve. And suddenly your value just skyrocketed. So I think most people just don't get the purpose of why this works or how, but if they will just take themselves out of the equation, they won't believe how successful they can be.
There are obviously outliers dealing with virality as it relates to creating audience, but you have a big audience. I have a big audience. It took a long time. I mean, I started at the top of the pandemic, so it took less time because everybody was at home with nothing to do for quite a while. But I would argue that, and I think that that's really the hurdle for so many of the people listening is, oh my God, I have like 10 followers. It's going to take me 100 years to get to 10,000 followers. But the other side of it is marketing. You do a lot more of it across multiple industries than I do. But what I tell my clients is that great marketing works immediately. It works instantaneously. I've never launched a loyalty program or an LTO or an email initiative that took a minute to warm. And so I'm curious to know, based on your firsthand experience, I mean, is that how you engage with marketing as well? Has that been your experience?
My thought is that everything is to the benefit of the other person. And it's interesting because you can hear different people arrive at it different ways, but we're all describing the same tree on the same hill. Giving it away is the only value anywhere because you are only valuable to somebody if you can help them achieve the thing they're trying to get. So if you accept that construct, then every single thing that you do should be advantageous immediately. And the only time it's not is when it's self-promotion. This is why I'm not a fan of, the coupons and the percent offs and the promos and the self-healing zippers and the ballistic nylons of the world, because none of that matters. I can't relate to that. It doesn't have anything to do with it. Why do you need? What are you trying to achieve? What's keeping you from it? Those are the only things that matter. Because once you understand that, you understand what they value or need or are seeking. Now you can have relevance, or you can't, or you don't. And you know better now. Now I know that I'm not going to go ping somebody who would never, ever use my services. Why would I waste my time on them? That doesn't make sense. There's no way we could be a good match. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means there's no reason for connectivity. I can bridge them to nowhere. So now the question is, how can I see what it is that people are trying, or what is it that they're getting from my brand, regardless of what the brand is, so that I can articulate the same thing they got excited about to other people so that they can get excited right along with them. If I look at it through that lens, boy, does it make the world easier.
And in the industry, we had a competitive advantage because, and I advocate that my clients do this, we would just outgive.
Yeah.
So it was always cooking demos and cocktail demos and recipes for this and that. And, I'll tell my clients, and they'll say, well, if I show them how to make the most popular drink on the menu, they're not going to come in. And it's like, they don't come in for the drink, they come in to drink.
Right.
It's different. They're coming in for an experience, not for the product itself. But that's where the inherent value is. When I started coaching, the coach of coaches who typically coaches coaches who coach coaches, that taught me everything I know. He goes, if you want to take over your vertical, out teach. Figure out what you know, figure out what you're best in the world at, and just give it away. And people will follow you in droves. And I must tell you, both strategies in two different verticals, which aligns with exactly what you're saying, they worked incredibly well. As it relates to brand, do
Yeah.
you have any real world examples or clients that took great storytelling and transformed an ordinary product into something extraordinary in the mind of the market?
Yeah. I mean, and we've done it in a couple of different places. The Delsey one was the most fun because it was one of the hardest to do. Music and arts was another one that was a lot of fun because it was, you want to talk about diamond in the rough. That was one. And then they wound up selling to Guitar Center. So, like in both instances, you've got something that has a really difficult sell. The Delsey one was, they did what I jokingly referred to at the time as Taco Bell pricing luggage, right? It was like $79.99, $119 bottom end stuff, entry level stuff. But the bigger challenge was that nobody buys luggage. I mean, you buy luggage every 8 years. So there's like an 86% chance that whatever luggage you were given at your college graduation or your wedding, you'll buy the rest of your life because people just don't care. And there's like a 80% chance that you're going to buy Samsonite if you're a US citizen because it's the only brand anybody can recall. So it's like, how do you fight that with a French luggage manufacturer? And the thing that we found was that in the wake of 9/11's changes to travel, people said, well, travel has become a drag, and they hated certain aspects of it. They were like, I hate standing in the lines. I hate that I can't go, greet my grandmother when she gets off the plane anymore. I got to wait down here in the lobby. Like, that stuff all sucked. And they forgave all of it. You know what really chapped everybody's butt? Overweight bag fees. Because they never saw them coming. And they were like, I've spent all this money and now all of a sudden I have to pay for this bag weight and whatever. So we took Delsey's one line of lightweight bags. There were 5 bags in the US out of all the stuff they sold. And we turned them into the lightweight category luggage leader. And they've held that position now for over 15 years. The whole thing, though, was we're going at the idea that if people hate this idea, and they kept saying travel's become a drag, it's become a headache, like I don't like it anymore. And we were like, all right, travel light. Delsey will become the brand that says we'll make it fun and effortless and easy for you. Had nothing to do with the suitcase, had nothing to do with any of the features or benefits of the suitcase, really. What it had to do was to say, look, we appreciate the fact that that bothers you. And we happen to have a lightweight product. And hey, isn't it cute that the term light means effortless and fun, as well as we make this problem go away? If we sandwich those two ideas together, now all of a sudden we have something that you'll care about. And that's exactly what happened. 86% increase in North American sales year one, 72% year two, 837% over the first 6 years. So it's like, who can complain with that? That totally changed their standing in the global market for the Delsey brand. That's a lot of fun.
Well, and you look at their media, and for several of your clients, and you as well, building audience is really, really, really hard, but it is achievable. A completely different animal is engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at the media that you create and I see how actively people engage with it, whether it's for yourself, your brand, or for other brands, there's a formula there that you figured out. I was reading, you wrote something today on LinkedIn because I cyberstalk you. That's why we're on this call today. And it was something about a client that you had during 9/11, right?
Yeah, that
And
was a day.
yeah, I mean, really. And it's not you selling your wares, or if you're interested in this thing, you should do that. You've cracked this code on like engaging in an authentic way, building know, like, and trust, and starting conversations that people want to have for both yourself and other people's brands. What is that formula?
The world is a cocktail party. Act accordingly. If you talk about yourself at a cocktail party, how long do you have an audience? Not very, right? So you have to be interesting. So the only thing that you can do is say, well, I know this one interesting thing that I can share about, and stick with it. So, your coach's coach for the coaches was dead on accurate to say, figure out the thing that you do well, that you know well, that you can share anecdotally, and share the holy hell out of it. Like, just go share the holy hell out of it. And the thing is, the people who don't care about my content at all, which is the overwhelming vast majority, right? The number of people who follow me isn't a rounding error, right? So any hubris that I count or matter in any way, shape, or form is completely a joke. So if you just are like, look, this is the thing I know and I get super up about, and other people that stumble along it are going to say, he's boring, he's boring, he's boring. And then every umpteenth person comes along and goes, oh, you know what? That's relevant to me. That's interesting. Yeah, okay, I'll get into that. But again, I go back to the self-promotion thing. It isn't like the second I turn the corner of, you should try Brand Boss HQ. Like the second that we get into that crap, it's over. So don't do it. And I don't want to do it. They don't want to hear it. Why bother? Instead, tell a story about, the worst client experience that you ever had, and that poor person that has that trophy. And there have been those have, tried to take them off the hill, but that one's still the best one, right? Like that's the story that no one can beat.
I want to dig deeper into credibility, because I think it's something that is as easy to build over time as it is to destroy in a moment.
Yeah.
For most restaurants, I think the aspiration is to build a big audience, right? A bunch of people that love them. And that over time you become an arbiter of taste, right? That you look at what we do, you see that it's world-class work, that it comes from great intention. And then it's the salesmanship, right? So come by this Friday, right? Or come by, this pie is half off for the next 2 hours. Come sit on this patio now. You hear about CTAs, and I'm sure that everybody listening hears calls to action, calls to action, calls to action. Where does that belong in your marketing? And at what point do you ask for the sale or ask for them to patronize your place?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First off, calls to action are typically strongest when used closer to the bottom of the funnel, right? Nobody needs a call to action when they're becoming aware of a brand. That would be like walking into a bar when you're in your 20s and you're single and seeing somebody that was interesting across the room and running up and trying to make wedding plans with them. Like, they're not ready for that yet. You have to be charming first, and you have to engage, and then you have to build some rapport. And then if things go well, then you talk about, and the thing is businesses are in such a rush, and they just don't realize that in any other aspect of their business, they would be appalled by that kind of behavior. Hi, you've seen the movie Hitch, right? My favorite scene in that movie is when that jackwipe comes into the bar and is like, you've got really pretty eyes. She'll have an appletini. And she's like, Chip, I'm not interested in you, man. It's been a rough day. And by the way, I don't drink appletinis. And he's like, you're not hearing me. You're really beautiful. And that's how most businesses market themselves. And when they see it in a different context, they're appalled by it. And yet they go right back out and do it again the next day and can't figure out why it's turning people off. I would be much more tempted to respond to a call to action that was like, you can't handle our hot chili, which we serve only on Fridays, than I would to say, we've got the hottest chili in the world and we serve it on Fridays. Like, I'd be way faster over there to hear, oh, you like hot food? You can't handle the truth, right? Like, come on in here and find out what that's all about. So I think it's not just the call to action and where it is, but it's also how it's done. And I also think that people have a kind of a confusion about what proper engagement or meaningful engagement is. One of my favorite restaurants in St. Louis, I don't know if you've ever been there, but St. Louis is like such a great food mecca.
It is.
And there was this phenomenal hole in the wall Hispanic restaurant, Mexican restaurant that we used to go to for lunch when I worked down there. And this woman was so great. It was like, if you wanted a beer, she's like, you know where the fridge is? Right. But the thing that was so great about it was like her big thing, her brand was you felt like family. Like we go in there and sit down and she'd be like, well, you don't think I'm getting an extra one for you, right? The tortillas are over there. And it was wonderful. Like it was so great. So it didn't have to be anything like special or whatever. They had another restaurant. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it, but there was a restaurant, an Italian restaurant down there where if you didn't if you didn't clear the first plate, she'd yell at you. It was like you'd go to get yelled at and you'd bring your friends from out of town that didn't see it coming, right? And she'd walk by with a like wooden spoon and basically whack you if you didn't finish at least one plate of her food. And she'd be like, "What? You don't like it?" And it was so funny to watch. Like it'd bring the whole room, people who had seen it would kind of snicker and the people who were going through it would turn red. And like but it was so endearing and it was so fun. And you knew that if you went, you had a 50-50 chance that it would be your turn to somehow piss her off and to get her attention. It was great. And those things cost nothing. They cost absolutely nothing. And they are 100%, in her case, authentic. I saw her do it to her kids, right? Like they'd walk out and we'd whack them in the middle, like in the middle of the restaurant. She'd be like, where are you going? Are there dishes back there? Get back in there and do the dishes, So it was 100% real and authentic to who she was as a human being. And so when she did it, it was 100% authentic to each of the people that experienced it. And they loved her for it. And even the people who came by and were like, well, God, I'll never do that again. They're not her audience. It was the people that wanted that sort of familial, I belong here. She's going to care about whether I care about the food. Like that's cool. And you just can't find that everywhere.
If I have any expertise as it relates to business or marketing or anything, it wasn't born out of this ingrained wisdom. It was born out of failure. It was born out of doing something, doing it as badly as it's ever been done before, and then scrambling to figure out how to do it better. When I opened that fine dining restaurant as a Cajun and Creole restaurant in downtown Los Angeles, shockingly, there was not a massive market for that, at least enough to fill a 6,000 square foot, 2-story restaurant. We lost $250,000 the first year. And so I had what I would argue was a failed brand, poor product market fit, and if you read the reviews, very poor execution to top it all off. And we turned it around. We turned it around over the course of the next 18 months. And I'm sure that there are a bunch of people listening that are like, damn, Bill, I wish I had heard this 6 months ago or 6 years ago. But there is potential to turn it around. And I think a brand that we both follow, and there's a bunch to learn from, is Abercrombie and how they've completely reinvented themselves. What do you think they did right, and what should other brands take away from that repositioning?
I think the biggest problem with brands is that they tend to start protecting what they think is right. And that goes back to, like, if you talk to a young brand that has nothing to lose, they'll try anything, they'll go anywhere, they'll be flexible. Like they're just that way. And then the second that there's anything in place, then you suddenly you stop playing to win and you start playing it safe. And that transition is super dangerous for businesses because things never stop changing. And so just to kind of support your point, it is never too late, ever. Nothing is ever too late. It doesn't matter if it's the worst thing in the world. Look at Domino's Pizza and what they were able to do, right? There were literally people saying, this is spray paint on cardboard. Like it could not have gotten any worse. And they turned it around. And I think Abercrombie did the same thing. They were elitist when being elitist was fun. And you could get away with it, right? 80s, 90s, and whatever. And it was like, dude, you don't look, it was basically, you can't afford me teen 20-something mentality, right? Like, I look good. I know I look good. I don't have to date you. You can't afford me. Like, it was the whole playful, like, I'm awesome and untouchable thing. And then the world around it changed. And that was no longer fun or cool. Then all of a sudden it was exclusive and it was like uninviting, and the world was trying really hard to include everyone in some way. And so all of a sudden they fell out of sync with where the world was, and they didn't change it. And as a result, people stopped buying from them. So when the new CEO came in and changed that, her whole perspective on the universe was, look, that was then, this is now. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think that there were a lot of brands that tried to figure out who they were in the new Zoo review and kind of lost themselves a little bit along the way. And now they're going to be given what they will probably feel is a challenge, but is actually an amazing opportunity to say, what if? What if instead we chose to come at this a completely different way? What if for 24 hours, without touching or changing a thing, we gave ourselves permission to go into a room filled with white paper and big Sharpie markers, and we just said, what works, what doesn't? What do we love doing and what do we hate doing? And what could we be if we chose not to be what we are now? If you'll just give yourself the freedom to do that exercise, you are invincibly powerful. It's just that most businesses don't. They say, well, that won't work for us. That doesn't work. That's not who we are. Well, maybe who you are isn't who you need to be anymore. And you got to be willing to consider that. Even if you find that that's not the case, you still have to consider it or you're never going to get anywhere.
And I think the paradigm shift for a lot of the people listening is, if I was to oversimplify marketing, and I'm sure you have thoughts on this as well, I would say a failed brand, a struggling brand really only has one of two issues, right? Either it's a product market fit issue or it's an awareness issue. Either everybody knows and nobody cares, or nobody knows, but if they knew, they would care. And I believed for a long time in my career that I could create demand, that I could open up a bologna shop in a vegan community and I could make it work.
How'd that work for you?
Not well at all, Bill. Terribly, in fact. But it's, I think we are so in love with the thing that we make in this industry as opposed to being in love with the people that we serve. What is the barometer in your mind when you are looking to see, when a brand comes to you and says, this is the widget, this is the thing that we make, this is the perfect thing that we've created? How do you analyze whether there is demand for that thing?
I am not a product market person. So it's not for me to say that you're making your sausage wrong. That's not for me. I have absolutely no standing in that arena. I wouldn't tell someone how to make sunglasses. I wouldn't tell them how to make jeans. I wouldn't tell them how to make their food or their restaurant. What I will tell them is, do you have any idea whether you align with anybody else that actually cares? And are those people here? Because if they don't, it won't matter. And, you could make, bologna pancakes, and it might be the world's best thing in the world. But if you're in a place that can't stand anything that's processed, you're never, ever going to sell it. So what difference does it make if it's the best thing in the world? So I think it's more of a question of where do you market? To whom do you market? Why would they care? The question of why would anybody care is so vastly overlooked and underappreciated. And it's the only thing in the world that matters at all. So I think until people sit down and really wrestle with that and grapple with a solution on that, everything else is more or less a waste of time.
I ask this question at the end of every interview. It is odd to ask you because you've built such an audience opening the kimono, but I'm going to ask anyway, Bill. What should we steal from you? What are the tactics? What should we steal from you?
Everything.
What are the tactics, the tools, the strategies that have served you well that the people listening could turn this thing off and go execute in their own businesses and it would serve them well?
Number one, social media is social for a reason. It is not paid media. Stop confusing them as the same thing because they're not. So social media is all about getting to know somebody that represents a brand so that you can feel comfortable with that brand. Period. End of story. So hiring the intern to go make your social media posts or whatever is not going to work. Number two, figure out one simple thing that you exist for. Just one. And that exercise is hard. It's really difficult. And I'm not saying, your menu has one item on it. That's not the point. The question is, what do you represent? If I go to an Outback Steakhouse versus a Longhorn Steakhouse, why? What is the thing that I'm going to get that's different? And so few brands take the time to think that out. All they do is they say, well, this is what we think we are. And they go out. I can't tell you how many businesses that do that. A little research will give you insight you can't imagine. So this brings me to the next thing. You can't read your own label from inside the jar. So, what you think you are and the way that other people see you is two totally different sets of language. And you're going to have to figure out what the Rosetta Stone is that makes it possible for you to both be on the same page. I mean, any of these things, they're so simple. Stand for one thing. Don't talk about yourself. Talk about what is important to them. Never be boring. Funny makes money for a reason. Like people would like to be edutained. They want to learn a little something and they want to be given a little entertainment. And that can be thoughtful. It can be funny. It can be challenging a perspective. It can be, Dove's Real Beauty campaign was massive by asking questions like freckles are not a problem, right? Like, so this face is flawed or flawless just because they have freckles. I mean, people were like in droves going, finally somebody recognizes somebody that doesn't have like perfect skin and perfect whatever. Like, we're beautiful too. So it's like inside every brand is one essential belief set. Find what that is and start telling that story. And along the way, share absolutely everything that you can about what you do. Have you seen the Don't Fuck It Up chef on
No,
TikTok?
I
Oh
have
my,
not.
seriously? Oh, you gotta
Yeah.
love this guy. So he's in New York or New Jersey somewhere. I can't quite tell. He hasn't given me enough. I think he's in New York. But anyway, he gets on and he's like, I'm going to teach you how to make omelets because you've been doing it wrong your whole life. Don't fuck it up. That's it. And that's just his whole shtick. And he gets on and he's like, and I'm going to teach you how to do pasta the right way. And I'm going to teach you how to do this. And after each one of them, he says, and don't fuck it up. And it's so simple and it's so brilliant. And he's just like, this is how you do it. And by the way, I'm going to go back to my job now and go do it for, 350 people in the next couple hours. Just find something that you really love, that you're really passionate about, and be really in love and passionate about it in front of other people, and watch how much they go, wow, I really appreciate the fact that you are and that you are willing to share it. There's no better way to create connection. The rest of it is all secondary.